there, welcome to the Cory Doctorow podcast, and it's nice to be back here, especially since I might have been dead if it wasn't for some quick thinking, which, to be frank, I only needed to deploy because of some very dumb thinking. At the weekend, we went away for my daughter's godmother's 40th birthday. Paula Leggia, a good friend of ours and former flatmate of ours, and we rented a country house here in England, in Norfolk, and on the last day, I thought I would take the baby out to see the fields, well, the toddler out to see the fields, she's 2.5 now, and see if we could find a deer or maybe see a cow. And we were walking around the paddocks out behind this country house, and we saw a little herd of cows, and so I thought, oh, we'll go over and we'll see the cows. So I started walking towards them, and I saw that they were walking towards us, and that was kind of cool, because it would shorten the walk a little, and then I realized they weren't walking towards us, they were running towards us, and then I realized that they weren't cows, they were young, angry bulls. Lots of them, about 25 of them, running as fast as they could directly at us, mooing angrily. So that's when we turned around, ran as fast as I could with the baby in my arms, basically tossed her over a barbed wire fence, scrambled over it myself, and then circumnavigated an entire planted field until I found a spot where the barbed wire was near some fallen logs, and I could build a little staircase and get back over the fallen logs out to the main road and back to the house. So that was my adventure of the bulls. It was a very adventurous weekend, or week rather. The other thing that happened since the last time I spoke to you is that I got my passport back from the Home Office here in England, and I am now an official permanent resident of England, and I hope within a year to be a citizen as well. There are some complications with that. I haven't been here. I haven't spent enough consecutive days in the country since I settled here because I travel so much for work. And so there's some question about whether or not I'll qualify, but my immigration lawyers are going to try their best. Another reminder for those of you in the DC area, I'll be in your location at the end of June. First, I'll be at Red Emma's Anarchist Bookstore on the 27th of June at 3 p.m. That is co-sponsored by Baltimore Node, the hackerspace. And then on the 28th, I'll be doing an evening event in DC for Copy Night at the New America Foundation, co-sponsored by Public Knowledge at 6:30 p.m. So I'll see you at one, if not both of those, I hope. Those of you who are going to the American Library Association, that's the actual reason I'm going to DC. These are just some things I tacked on around it. My publisher is bringing me there, so I'll see you at ALA. I'm really looking forward to that. I love library events. What other news? Well, I upgraded my OS this week. For those of you who care about this sort of thing, I'm now running the latest flavor of Linux, Lucid Linux. I'm a few weeks behind the curve here, only because I was overseas on my book tour when Lucid Linux came out, and I thought it was really just tempting fate to do this Lucid Linux thing, to do an OS upgrade without, my optical drive, my backup drive, all the rest of it. But I'm running it. I've been running it for like 3-4 days. It is running really great. Haven't found any problems, no complaints. As they say on eBay, A+++, would do business, excellent seller. So that's the introductory material. I'm about to do a little more reading. Well, I'm going to finish reading the Shareable.net story, The Jammie Dodgers and the Adventure of the Leicester Square Screening. As I mentioned last week in part 1, this is a kind of warm-up story I wrote to get myself in the mood to write my next young adult novel, which is called Pirate Cinema, and is due at Christmas. When that's done, I'll be, I think I'll have a publication date. I'm hoping it'll be the following autumn, so that would be September or so, 2011. But they may try to rush it for the spring of 2011, something like May or June. It would be nice to have a little more leisure to do the copy editing and so on, but hard to say. Anyway, so that's the news, and here is more of the Jammie Dodgers and the Adventure of the Leicester Square Screening. I put the new OS onto the screen party while I was recharging it. It was finicky work. The phone was so old that I had to update it 3 times before I could get it to the stage where it would even accept the latest bootleg Android flavor, the one with all the video codecs, even the patented ones. I was worried I'd end up bricking it, but I managed it. Thanks Spaghetti Monster for how-tos. But the battery wouldn't take the charge. Age or manufacturing defect had turned it into a dud. That set me on another net trawl, looking for a recipe to convert another battery for use. Turned out that HTC had followed Nokia's lead in putting a bunch of crypto on a little chip in the battery that it used to authenticate the phone to prove that it was a real licensed battery. So I had to get a similar HTC battery and transfer the auth chip to it, which was even more finicky. It took the rest of the day, but when Cecil put one caffeine-shaky hand on my shoulder around 10 p.m., I was able to turn around and beam at him and show him the phone in full glory. He beamed back at me, and I knew I'd done right by him. "You're a true maestro," he said, hefting the phone. Some of our fellow Jammie Dodgers had drifted in and out through my works that day, and now they filed in behind Cecil and giggled and poked each other like naughty children. Cecil rubbed the phone against a thumb drive and transferred his cut, then walked to the window, slid away the board, aligned the projector's eye with the crack, and then used his laser pointer to find the mirror he'd set into the wall of the tall council high-rise opposite the pub. He was trying to get the pointer to bounce off the mirror and then show up on the large blank wall of the adjacent high-rise. Once he had the shot lined up, he fitted a little monocle to the projector's eye and tapped at the phone's screen. A moment later, the phone speaker started to play the familiar sting he'd used for his great work, and I rushed to the next window to see the result. At first, it was just a big, fuzzy blur on the blank wall, a watery light show. My heart sank. It wasn't going to work after all. But as Cecil turned the monocle's focus dial, the image sharpened and sharpened again, and then it was as if I was watching a film at a big open-air cinema, like one of those American drive-in theaters. There was no sound, but that was all right. There was Keith Kenninson, in his role as an angry priest struggling with alcoholism in inner-city Boston, in Whiskey in the Drum, tearing off his dog collar as he lost his faith, storming out the door, and now he was walking down a street that wasn't Boston at all. It was the Moonbase from Skyjacked, and the cut was so smooth you'd swear that they were one movie, and Kenninson bounded down the ramp towards the main door where the bomber had hidden his charge, Kenninson's face a grim mask. He clicked the phone off. The Jammie Dodgers lost our minds. It worked! It worked! We danced Ring-a-Rosy like toddlers and collapsed in each other's arms. Right, all good, he said. Tomorrow night we move. It's amazing what a lot of respect a high-vis vest and a couple of traffic pylons will get you, even in Leicester Square. We started work at 8 a.m., when the only people in the square were a long queue of tourists waiting for cheap theater tickets, and a few straights clicking over the pavement in their work shoes as they rushed for their offices in Soho. Between me and Sal and Amir, we got 9 little security mirrors placed on the walls of strategic buildings in less than an hour. At one point, a community support officer, one of those fake coppers who sign up for the sheer thrill of the authority, even directed traffic around our ladder. I was glad of all the little IR LEDs strung unobtrusively around my helmet then, for they surely blew out the cameras in his hat and epaulettes. It was Cecil that hired the hotel room overlooking the square, using a prepaid debit card from a newsagent's. They asked him for his national ID card, and he claimed in a funny mid-Atlantic drawl that he'd emigrated to the States 10 years before and never been issued one, said that his passport was at the Russian embassy getting a business traveler's visa glued into it. They accepted a California driver's license that I made up at the squat, decorating it with a wide variety of impressive security holograms that I printed from a little specialist ID printer I found at an industrial surplus store. I was worried I'd overdone it. One of the hollows was almost certainly a Masonic symbol, but the desk clerk just put it down on the photocopier and took a copy. The holograms did a great job of blocking Cecil's face on the copy. From then, it was just a waiting game, waiting for the sun to set. Waiting for the crowds to fill the square, waiting for the first film showings to let in, the huge queues snaking around the square as each attendee had his phone and electronics taken off and put into storage during the movie. Then the second screening. Finally, at 11:30, the square was well roaring. Everyone who'd been at the second show, everyone queued up for the third show, everyone spilling out of the pubs, a heaving mass of humanity. You can fit 8 Jammie Dodgers into a single-occupancy Leicester Square hotel room, provided they don't all try to breathe in at once. We breathe in shifts. Cecil knelt at the window, phone on the sill, careful marks he'd made with a sharp pencil and his laser pointer, showing the precise angles to each mirror. He looked around us all, his eyes shining. "This is it," he said, "my Leicester Square premiere." The monocle is already glued to the phone's back over the projector's eye. The phone's been fitted to a little movable tripod, and now, with a trembling fingertip, Cecil prods the screen. Then, quickly, nimbly, spinning the focus knob on the monocle. Then the hiss of air sucked over teeth as we all rushed to the window to see, peering around the drapes. He was much better on the focus this time, faster despite his trembling hand. There, on the marquee of the Odeon, Keith Kenninson as an 8-year-old, begging his mother to let him have a puppy, then a montage of shots of Kenninson with his different dogs, a mix of reality TV, feature films, dramas, comedies, the story of a life with dogs, the same character actors moving in and out of shot. Below, the crowd boiled over. People were pointing, laughing, screeching, aiming their phones at the Odeon, and coppers were rushing about, shouting into their lapels, and... He moved the phone, swiveling it to line up with the next mark, and bam! There was Kenninson again, a series of love scenes this time, writ large on the huge marquee of the Virgin Megatheatre, and the crowd looked this way and that, trying to see where the magic pictures made of light and ingenuity had went, and they found it, and the police rushed around again, and bam! It was now screening on the Empire, and now it was an extended battle, Kenninson fighting a shark, a ninja, terrorists, Romans, Nazis, and bam! It was in the gardens in the middle of the square. The crowd was going wild, moving like a great wave from side to side, phones held high, getting in the cops' way. "Time to go," I said, watching more cops trying to push their way into the square, then more. "Time to go, Cease," I said again, tugging his arm. The other Dodgers were already stealing out the door, padding their way to the fire stairs and the lifts, led by tall Sal with a pad of post-it notes that she carefully stuck over the eye of each CCTV as she passed it, her infrared LEDs having temporarily blinded it anyway. Cecil let me lead him away. He was trembling all over, and there were tears rolling down his cheeks, though he didn't seem aware of them. We peeled off our gloves and stuck them in our pockets, pulled off our hairnets and removed the disposable booties from our shoes. We made our way down the lift in silence, Cecil visibly pulling himself together, so that he was able to calmly nod at the night clerk, tossing a twangy "Good night" over his shoulder as we stepped out into Bedlam. And that is how I will always picture Cecil B. DeVille, standing there on the edges of Leicester Square, face turned up to the flashing lights, cheeks wet with new tears as the disposable phone in the abandoned hotel window played out another 18 minutes and 12 seconds of the great work before the law found it and shut it down, provoking howls from the crowd. But the howls didn't turn ugly, didn't turn into a riot. Instead, what we got was an ovation. Somewhere in the crowd, someone began to clap, and then someone else clapped, and then hundreds were clapping, whistling, and catcalling, and Cecil and I looked at each other, and he was crying so hard the snot was running down his face. I thought of my family on the estate, and damned if I didn't start to cry too. For a pair of hardened gangsters, we were a bloody, soppy pair. All right, that's it. Talk to you next week. You've been listening to the Cory Doctorow podcast, licensed under Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, Share-alike US 3.0, or as Woody Guthrie put it in another context, this song is copyrighted in the US under seal of copyright 154085 for a period of 28 years, and anyone caught singing it without our permission will be a mighty good friend of ourn, because we don't give a darn. Publish it, write it, sing it, swing to it, yodel it, we wrote it, that's all we wanted to do. Many thanks to John Taylor Williams for mastering. That's Ryneck Studio, WRYNECK Studio @gmail.com. John Taylor Williams is a full-time self-employed audio engineer, producer, composer, and sound designer. In his free time, he makes beer, jewelry, odd musical instruments, and furniture. He likes to meditate, to read, and to cook. Talk to you next week.